Hey, I'm Felissa Rose, and you're watching Keto and Crime.
This week, we're getting into one of my favorite cases of all time. Before O.J. Simpson, before Casey Anthony, before John and Lacey Peterson, before any highly televised case that you could have seen on court TV or just on the news in general, there was Pamela Smart. She was also the original femme fatale. She was the original, as far as we know, sexy teacher gone bad who likes to seduce young boys. So we're going to get into what happened with Pamela Smart. Hey everyone, I want to tell you about a great new sponsor for the channel, Keto Crisp. They reached out to me wanting to help me get back on my keto journey. As you know, I've had some issues and they know that sweets are a problem for me. So I have partnered with them after sampling them, and they are really good bars. I highly recommend them. Filling, not too sweet, but just sweet enough. So if you're on a keto or a carnivore or low-carb lifestyle, they are the perfect bar. But moreover, what I want to talk about is the company itself. Adam Brennan is the founder, and he has suffered from cerebral palsy as well as obesity most of his life, and yet he still persevered and founded his own company. I think just the whole Keto Crisp brand is a monument to the human spirit, and I just wanted to point that out, that I only choose to partner with brands that I really believe in. I both believe in their product, I believe in Adam, and I really believe in their motto. It's about what you can do, not what you can't. And with that being said, I'm proud to welcome a new sponsor to the channel. You can try them out for a 20% discount. Just like most keto bars, they're a bit pricier than the junk you're going to find in the supermarket, but well worth it. And so you can get 20% off using my discount code, which I will link down in the description below. And I look forward to doing many more collaborations with Keto Crisp. Thank you so much, everyone. And so let's dive right in. Pamela Smart was born Pamela Wohas to John and Linda Wohas of Coral Gables, Florida, August 16th, 1967. It was an upper middle class family. They did very well. She was sent to private school, and everyone that knew Pam said that she had one dream, and that was to be famous on television. She wanted to be a broadcaster. She highly admired people like Barbara Walters and really Diane Sawyer, any of the majors that were on television. She wanted to be like them. And then, when she was old enough to watch television and listen to music, she got into big hair bands and 80s metal. Things like this. So, along with that came her becoming part of the MTV generation, where she very much got into watching the original MTV VJs like Kennedy and people like that kind of melded broadcasting with a love of music, and that's really what she sought out to do. So, after graduating from Pinkerton Private School, she enrolled in Florida State University, majoring in communications, where she started a show dedicated to big hair bands and metal on their public access radio station called The Maiden of Metal, and that was the lifestyle she lived. She interviewed Eddie Van Halen. She interviewed a few other well-known band members of the day, and was really ingesting herself into this metal culture. If you call big hair bands metal, there's a lot of controversy there, but I like some Van Halen and some Def Leppard myself, so I really can't say anything. I had the big bangs and everything. But while she was in college, her family moved to New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a very small state, so when I say New Hampshire, it's possible to drive from one end of it to the other in just over a day, under a day. So it's not a very big state. So very easy to get around in the state of New Hampshire from town to town and city to city. So her family moved near Derry, New Hampshire. And it was there at a New Year's Eve party in 1986 that she met the man that would go on to be her husband, whose murder she would be accused of, Mr. Greggory Smart. He was born in Nashua, New Hampshire, September 4th, 1965, to William A. and Judith Smart. He had brothers and sisters. He went to the local public high school. He wasn't as academically inclined as Pam. He was more of a hands-on kind of guy, preferred to go to trade school, took trade school classes, did very well in them, but had often told his dad was a very successful insurance agent for Metropolitan Life Insurance Company out of Nashua, New Hampshire. So he wanted the opposite of that. He wanted to work with his hands. So he ended up making his living doing landscaping. He ran a lawn care business. And he worked in one of the many factories that were present in New England at that time. Greg, like Pam, was very much into the metal culture. He grew his hair into very curly, shoulder-length locks, which made him quite the catch to the girls of New Hampshire. He did graduate from Londonderry Public High School, 1983, and then went on to more technical and trade school training at the Metropolitan Career Success School in Warwick, Rhode Island. And as I said, he busied himself working in factories and running a lawn care business until he met Pam Wohas at that New Year's Eve party in 1986. 1987, February, he and Pam made it official and started dating after a very quick rendezvous at that New Year's Eve party. And she had to return to school to finish up her senior year at Florida State University. Well, while she was gone, they corresponded, they wrote letters, they talked on the phone. He was really sort of tired of living in New Hampshire, what he was used to in New England. He wanted a different way of life. Even his dad said that he was sort of sick of the whole cold, New England lifestyle. So he decided here was his chance to get to sunny Florida because he was dating a girl that was established there. So he moved down to be with Pam. And while she was finishing up her communications degree and hosting her radio show, he busied himself running a landscaping business in Florida and did quite well. So once she graduated in 1989, they decided it was time to move back to New Hampshire. And by that time, his parents had left Nashua and moved to the small town of Derry. And his father actually assisted the young couple in getting a condo in their condo complex at Misty Morning Drive in Derry. And they helped them secure unit number 4E, which the young couple at that time, Pam was 21, Greg was 23. They actually furnished it with all white furniture, very pretty. He purchased Pam a little Yorkie dog, which she named Halen after her favorite band, Van Halen. And they sort of molded into traditional life. They decided they were going to get married within just a few months. So basically, Greg did the unthinkable, at least in Pam's eyes. He decided he wanted to become an insurance agent like his dad. He decided that the blue-collar way of life, working in factories, at very hard back-baking work, the same with landscaping, wasn't for him, and he decided that maybe he could use his brain a little bit more, and he decided to become an insurance agent with Metropolitan Life Insurance Company of Nashua, just like his award-winning father, who was a 5-star agent there. So to get the job, without even asking Pam what she thought about it, he had his hair cut off. And he went from those gorgeous locks to a much more clean-cut look and got the job. He did bring his hair to Pam in an envelope, which is probably adding insult to injury, because she wasn't having it. She wasn't impressed. She didn't like it. She thought he was becoming a conservative fuddy-duddy. So he told her that just as soon as he proved himself and that he was making sales and everybody liked him, he could grow it back out and nobody would think any of the wiser, and he was still the same Gregg. She seemed to accept that, even though she really wasn't happy. They still continued to have, squabbles. They went ahead and got married. Still squabbled a little bit. Nothing really super bad. Pam had a bit of bad news in that she was turned down for a local television reporter's job there in the Derry, Nashua area, but then followed up with a bit of good news when she found out she had been brought on or hired as the media coordinator at Winnicott High School in nearby Hampton, New Hampshire. So she was going to sort of do their public relations, produce all their audio-visual stuff, and just generally being kind of a mentor to the kids in broadcasting, in communications, in technical, which is what she loved to do. So she had a good job. Gregg had a good job because he started to excel as an insurance agent. He won awards. He would work all day in the office setting appointments, and then at night he would go door to door to these appointments to sell these life insurance policies, and he would get sales. He won all sorts of awards, just like his dad. Was a very good insurance salesman and was really loving what he did, even though it was hard work, and was starting to make good money. During her tenure there, this was during the Nancy Reagan, early days of the Bushes, and so DARE and Just Say No was a big thing, and akin to this was a program in New Hampshire called Project Self-Esteem that Pam was tapped to help students perform, make videos for, promotional videos for, and it was there that she met Billy Flynn, 15-year-old Billy Flynn of Hampton, and 15-year-old Cecilia Pierce during making these videos, and they started kind of hanging out together, talking. Billy, like Pam, was a huge fan of hair metal and big hair bands, and so they bonded over their love of music. They started talking. He was amazed that she had ran a radio show and was just enthralled with her. Cecilia would later say that the people in the school called her Tinkerbell because she just kind of wafted down the halls and left sparkles and glitter behind her, that all the boys were in love with her, all the girls kind of admired her, and so she was a very popular teacher. However, she got a little too popular with a certain group of kids. She started hanging out with Celeste quite a bit. She got Celeste a job at working with her as an intern in the media center for pay and for credit. She also started hanging out with Celeste and Billy after hours, even so far as taking them dancing at a rock and roll club. Now, I had teachers that would sort of hang out with students in after-school programs, but it never went beyond having pizza or going bowling or something like that. I don't think I would have went with a teacher that wanted to take me dancing, though I probably wouldn't have gotten that many offers. I certainly wasn't a Tinkerbell. But they did. They hung out. In fact, during many of her husband's business trips, when he had to go out of state for training, or he went hunting with his friends, or he was just out at appointments at night, she would invite Billy and Celeste over to her condo. And it was during one of these visits that Celeste walked in on Billy and Pam in dalliance in the bedroom, basically going at it. They both confessed to Celeste that they had feelings for the other, and it kind of spiraled from there until they started engaging in a sexual relationship. During this time, Pam and Gregg, especially during Christmas of 1989, starting to argue a lot. In fact, Christmas night, she ran over to his parents' condo and basically told his parents that he had hit her. His father immediately went over to the condo to find out what had happened. Gregg said, absolutely not, I never hit her. We were just arguing, and I pushed past her to get into the bathroom, and I guess she thinks I hit her, but I didn't. So none of this was ever put on police records, so no authorities were ever called, but they started to have fights in public and kind of not in a very good state of their relationship. It was also during this time that Pam started telling Celeste and Billy that Gregg was cruel to her. He was hitting her. She showed them bruises on her arm, said they were from Gregg, and that she didn't know what to do. She needed to get out of the relationship. Billy basically said, I love you, I want to be with you, divorce your husband and we'll be together. I don't care what anybody says. And she says, well, I can't divorce my husband. Everything's in his name, the condo, the vehicles, everything. And if I divorce him, I'm going to be destitute. So I really need someone to deal with him for me. He needs to go away in the most permanent way possible. He needs to be dead for me to really be free of him. And she asked Billy pretty well point blank, do you know anybody that could kill him for me? And Billy, for the longest time, said no, because who in their right mind wants to do a contract killing for their teacher, you know? But he was smitten with her, and she began to bring it up more and more often, and saying how much better it would be if they could be together. They could only be together if he was gone, because then she would have a home they could live in, and promising this guy the world. Until eventually it got to the point that she started threatening not to be with him anymore if he didn't help her. So she offered him and his friend, Patrick Flynn, she offered Billy Flynn and his good friend, Patrick Randall, also known as Pete, $1,000 to deal with her husband. She gave them his schedule when he came and went for evening appointments, and gave them a list of dates she would be away at evening faculty meetings when they could deal with the situation. Actually, Patrick and Billy attempted to do this twice. Both times they chickened out and just couldn't do it. Finally, she threatened to break up with him, and actually did break up with him, because she said there was no point, that she was going to have to deal with this herself, and that, you know, that they were just not destined to be together. He didn't love her if he didn't kill. So basically, Billy caved. Late April of 1990, Billy caved and said he would do it, but they needed help. They needed more money. She said she was going to get $140,000 from life insurance from Gregg, so she could probably pay a little bit more, but later on she backed out of that and still offered them the same original $1,000. However, neither Billy nor Pete Randall had a car, had a gun, anything that would make this easier. So they brought in two friends in on it. Vance Latomy Jr., whose father, Vance Sr., owned quite a few weapons, and Raymond Fowler, who had a car. So together, for $1,000 split between them, they decided that on May 1st, when she had a faculty meeting and Gregg had evening appointments, they would go and deal with him. She gave them extensive coaching on how to do this, that Celeste would later overhear and later testify to the fact about wearing gloves, going through the basement door, about putting Halen, the dog, in the basement so that the dog was not traumatized, and decided that perhaps they should stage a robbery, though not trash the place enough to cause any real damage. She said she would leave some jewelry out for them to take, and to just deal with it in the most silent way possible. So on the night of May 1st, 1990, the four boys took the car. They went and had pizza at a local pizza parlor called Genio's in a strip mall not far from the condo complex. They left the car there, and Pete and Billy walked the distance to the condo to do the deed. They had on gloves. They had put scotch tape over their fingers to remove fingerprints, while the other two waited in the car. They went through the basement doors. They went into the house. They put, just like they had promised, Halen the dog in the basement and kind of trashed the place, made it look like a robbery, took the jewelry she had left, which later turned out to be just worthless costume jewelry. But still, they took it. And they waited for Gregg Smart to come home. About just before 9 o'clock, they heard his little pickup truck pull up out front. He put his key in the lock, came in the door in the foyer, calling for his precious dog because he loved that dog just as much as Pam did. And that's when the two boys stepped out. Pete, wielding a knife, held it to Gregg's throat, made him get down on his knees. Billy stepped around with a 38 revolver that Vance had stolen from his father and held it to Gregg Smart's head. All the time, according to Billy's and Pete's testimony, Gregg was begging for his life, asked them not to kill him, take anything they wanted, just don't kill him or hurt the dog. And they kind of stood there for a minute, they said, what seemed like an eternity. They knew they didn't have the courage to slit his throat, so finally Billy said he put the gun to the back of his head, said a little prayer, also said, God, please forgive me, and squeezed the trigger. Gregg dropped to the floor dead. The two quickly ran back through the basement, was careful to take the gun with them, went back through the basement doors, ran back to the shopping center, got in the car, and the boys disappeared. Pam came home not long after 9 o'clock, finding her husband. She immediately started screaming out front. Neighbors alerted 911 or the police, and they also alerted Gregg's parents, who immediately came, sat with Pam, took Pam back to their condo while the police sorted everything out. They also called Gregg's brothers and sisters. His brother Dean would later testify that she seemed more concerned about the location of her dog than actually what happened to her husband. And so she asked somebody to please go over and get her dog and bring him back so that he wouldn't be traumatized, which they did. Investigation started, and it lasted from basically May of 1990 to about August of 1990. During that time, Vance Latimer Sr. noticed that his son, Vance Jr., was also, all of a sudden had money to spend and also was acting a little strange. So he decided to kind of see what might be going on. He started looking through his guns, and he realized that his 38 revolver he had fired it and put it back dirty. So he was expecting it to be dirty. However, when he picked it up, he realized it had been fired again and cleaned. So he knew he didn't touch it. So he began to wonder if maybe his son didn't have something to do with the Smart murder. So he actually took that weapon to the Derry Police Department and turned it in, saying he thinks it might be the murder weapon. The police did tests. Sure enough, Gregg Smart was killed with a bullet discharged from that weapon. Along this time, there were rumors. The Derry police got an anonymous tip about June from an employee at the pizza parlor. Remember Gino's Pizza, where the boys had pizza? Saying that they had 4 boys that came in later than they should have on a school night. It's a very small town. New Hampshire's a very small state. And that they hung out in a car most of the night. They saw 2 of them walk away and then come back later. And it was just a little suspicious. Also, this employee, who was actually a female, went to Winnicott High School and said that the murder was all the talk at Winnicott. There were rumors going around that Pam Smart had her husband killed. Celeste, remember Celeste Pierce, who was her intern, had also talked to some friends saying that she knew more than she should and was nervous. As a result of this anonymous phone call, police called Celeste in for questioning and offered her immunity, a one-shot deal. No prosecution if you tell us exactly what we need to know. And she agreed. And she told them about all the conversations she had had with Pam.
When you noticed a change in the relationship between Bill Flynn and Pamela Smart?
Yes.
When was that?
February.
Can you tell us what happened at that time?
Pam told me that she loved Bill.
When Pam told you this, where were you?
In a room adjoining our office.
Can you tell us what happened at that time?
I laughed.
And before you left, were you sitting down? Were you standing? Was there other people in the room? What was going on?
She sat me down, told me.
I can't hear you.
She sat me down in a chair.
And what'd you say?
Laughed. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
That Pam had told Billy to do it, pressured Billy to do it, and also gave up the other 3 boys as well. So, Billy Flynn, Pete Fowler, Vance Latimer Jr., and Raymond Fowler were all taken into custody, and they all confessed and agreed to plead guilty and also to testify against Pam Smart. August 1st, 1990, at her office at Winnicott High School, she was arrested for the conspiracy to commit murder in the case of her husband, Gregg Smart. This case was the talk of the town. This is before court TV, y'all, so it was on every network. There were daily updates. It was almost impossible, and the defense tried to get it thrown out several times as a mistrial because of the fact they could not get an untainted jury. Everybody had an opinion on this case. I'm not going to get back on my soapbox about what I think about highly publicized cases. I think until the trial actually begins, there should be kind of a gag order on them so that you can get an untainted jury, and as long as that jury is sequestered, then talk all you want to during the trial, because it's not going to hurt anything at that point. But everybody was talking about this case. It was all over news, and basically it was a freak show. You had actual jurors trying to sell audio of the actual trial for money. You had members of the jury sitting in bars telling people how they were going to vote, and the defense tried to get everything thrown out as a result. However, the judge would just say it's their word against ours, nothing we can do. In a way, the trial was very unfair. Do I think that Pam did this? Absolutely. But do I think her trial was not as fair as it should have been? Absolutely. So it was just kind of like that. The boys and Cecilia, who I was calling Celeste earlier, I'm so sorry, basically was the key witness. During the investigation, she had been asked to go and have another conversation with Pam Smart that was recorded by Derry police. However, the main recorder failed, so that all they had was an audio tape backup, and that audio tape was so garbled.
Welcome back. 4 tape recordings were heard in court today, 2 recorded with consent over the telephone between Cecilia Pierce and Pamela Smart, and 2 through a body wire planted on Cecilia Pierce by police investigators with her consent. We want to remind our viewers tonight that the audio on these tapes is not good. It will require very close evaluation, but many of our viewers expressed an interest in hearing these tapes. Tonight you will hear portions of 2, the first from a telephone tap, the second from a body wire. All these tapes are uncensored tonight. The language that he used may offend some of our viewers. All the recordings occurred after the death of Greggory Smart. The jurors were given transcripts of the conversations because of the audio difficulty.
Your Honor, I would suggest at this time that everyone place on their earphones and make sure they are on and be ready to adjust the volume to their desired level.
It was almost impossible to understand, even though there were transcripts. Another point of contention with the defense was that the tapes, they couldn't even be understood by the jury, so how could they be understood by whoever transcribed them? So there was a lot of going back and forth, and they decided to admit part of it, but not all of it, so it was still a point of contention. Finally, at the end of the trial, March 22nd, 1991 was the day the trial ended. Pam Smart was sentenced to life in prison, no chance of parole, for conspiracy to commit murder in the murder of her husband, Gregg Smart. Incidentally, it was a very short trial. It started March 4th, 1991, and ended March 22nd, 1991. However, the actual coverage, as we talked about earlier, of the trial went on for well over a year. So by the time you got to the trial, everyone knew about it. So the boys, all 4 of the boys, pled guilty. Billy Flynn, Pete Randall, and Vance Latimer because they had active participation in the trial. 2 of them did it. 1 of them gave them the weapon. Got sentenced to life with a chance of parole after 40 years, with credit for the time served prior. The final boy got life with a chance of parole after 30 years. Starting in 2005, these boys' parole hearings started, and as of 2015, all of them are out of prison by virtue of parole. Some of them were released earlier on work release. From what I understood, they were all model prisoners. In fact, the prosecutors in the case said of Billy Flynn, the actual trigger man, that he showed remorse from the very moment he did it through today. That he said he is a quote-unquote gentle soul.
Flynn is now 33 years old. He's been in prison for the past 17 and a half years. Now, if you do the math on that, that means he's been locked up more than he was ever free. But he still has 10 years to go on his minimum sentence of 28 years to life. But despite that, Bill Flynn says he wants out early. Taking the podium, this is Bill Flynn's first chance to tell the Smart family how sorry he is for killing their son.
As soon as I walked in the room today, I felt a tremendous amount of shame.
His remorse for what he did 17 years ago is something no one in the courtroom seems to doubt. Even the prosecutor who cut a deal with him in exchange for his testimony believes Flynn has always been sorry.
You know, in some ways it's hard to believe, but he was a gentle soul.
And he showed absolute remorse. However, all of them did. However, Pam Smart has yet to admit her guilt, has yet to offer remorse for anything, even the seducing of an underage boy, until this point. She's now at Bedford Hills Maximum Security Women's Prison in upstate New York.
Smart says she can't imagine living the rest of her life here, inside the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, the only maximum security prison for women in New York.
It's hard for people to understand that this really means life.
And it really means life.
It really means life. It's a very serious sentence, and to me, honestly, I think it's worse than the death penalty. It is, because even the death penalty has an end.
She's serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole, convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and accomplice to first-degree murder for orchestrating the murder of her husband, Gregg. She says her sentence is unjust compared to Billy Flynn.
I said, God forgive me.
He pled guilty to second-degree murder. Now he's been granted parole and could be free as early as June.
I think forgiveness is a good thing, but why is there no forgiveness for me?
Where she's been the entire time. She did complete a master's degree in English and Literature from Mercer College. She works teaching women in the college. She was involved in a sexual related case with a corrections officer, her and another female. The details around that were kind of muddled, and she has yet to had a successful appeal. To this day, she contends her innocence and complains more about not being released. Also, anger at the fact that the boys have been released. So, that's the story of Pamela Smart, the original femme fatale and the original high-profile court case. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of this new profile, of this new format. I really want to do what you like. If you want me to go back to the old one, please let me know. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you want to support the channel. Links are down below. Thanks so much, everyone, and I really appreciate it. Keto Comic.